Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you have been here before, you know that this is my series in which I use tarot and oracle cards to dive into topics related to living an intentional life. And this week's topic is very interesting because if you are interested in living life intentionally, you know, as I do, that the intentional life is one in which we harness or take advantage of the powerful force of intention, which is never ending, which is constantly available to us. The difference is how open we are to it or how closed off we are to it. And when we're open to it, we're moving quickly towards all of the things that we have placed on our current of intention. The homes, the relationships, the jobs, the creative projects, the experiences, all of that is on the path of our intention. All of those things we want to have or do or be or experience are there. And all we need to do is really open up to that flow of intention. However, there are times when we feel blocked, aren't there? Have you ever felt blocked? Have you felt like some creative project that you've been working on has suddenly come to some screeching halt far before completion? Kind of like a writer's block. But not only writers experience it. It could be a painter or a musician or a composer or an actor or any kind of creative expression can have that moment or that time or period of blockage. Has that happened to you? It might not be something that we would normally call creative. It could be your 9-to-5 job. It could be your job as a worker on a factory line. It could be your job as a secretary or a data entry person. Yeah, all jobs, of course, have some creative elements to them, but we don't always consider those as creative all of the time. And still, we will sometimes reach a point where we feel like we've run out of steam, where we have lost our interest in what we're doing, or we lost the joy that we take in the job we are doing, or perhaps we've just lost our ambition to move forward in our careers. Or it could be a relationship. Now, have you ever had a time where it feels like your relationship has become stagnant, where things are not moving forward, and you want them to move forward? There are many areas of our lives where we feel that moment or time of blockage. And this week's Oracle and Tarot spread addresses that in a very unique way, because we know that there is no blockage to the flow of intention. It just doesn't exist. If there were a block to the flow of intention, this universe would probably collapse. This universe is based on this flow of intention, and the expansion of the universe is based on that flow of intention. So, what do we do? How do we reimagine that block? Are we going to continue thinking that it's something that's happening to us, or is it something that we have consciously or unconsciously created for ourselves? So let's look at that through this tarot and oracle spread, because we have some very interesting insights this week. And friends, the tarot spread has been laid, so let's take a look at it. Yes, friends, the new moon has come and gone, and I have changed out my tarot and oracle decks. So, if you're curious about these decks, who created them, what the names of the decks are, as usual, there will be a short clip at the end of this video that gives that information. And also, as usual, below the video, in the description box, there will be links so that you can go and look at and perhaps purchase one or most of these decks if you are interested. Now, I do not get any money from those links, just to let you know. I just provide them as a service to you, to help your shopping experience. Unfortunately, And I'm very sorry, one of these decks is completely out of print and has been out of print for many years. So I am very sorry about that. But you can get the other decks. Now, if you looked at that spread, you notice that the Oracle section, instead of being 3 or 4, I have 5. Count them, 5 cards out this time. And I laid them out in this fashion to be a kind of elemental spread. Why? Because this is the Oracle deck from USI called Prima Materia. And it's a very interesting deck. It's a deck that has taken the periodic table of elements and changed it into an Oracle deck. So each card is an element from the periodic table of elements. And so I thought, well, I'll do an elemental spread for the Oracle deck. Now, you probably know that in the West, we have 4 elements: fire, water, air, and earth. In the East, we have 5 elements. In Korean, there, hwa, su, mok, gum, il, to, hwa, su, mok, gum, to, fire, water, wood, which we do not have in the West, mok, gum, metal, which we do not have in the West, and earth. So instead of air, in the East, we have China, Japan, Korea. Yeah, we have, instead of air, we have wood and we have metal. But these cards are not laid out in the Eastern style. They're laid out in the Western style with the addition of one more, ether. Ether was a medieval concept for the spirit world, or that which is ineffable. Yeah, the ineffable element. So we have fire, water, air, earth, and ether. Ether being the center. Ether also being a representative of spirit or non-physical. So that's how I've got it laid out. And since the whole tarot spread has been laid out and you've already taken a peek at it, let's move right into the central oracle cards. So, what do you think? Isn't it a gorgeous deck? Don't you want to get it yourself? We've got those 5 cards as I mentioned. The central card is ether. Yeah? The top is fire. The bottom is water. The one on the left is air. The one on the right is earth. That's how I arranged them, but as I laid them out, I noticed that they're not exactly going to be, while they represent the elements, I'm not exactly thinking of air is the mental sphere, water is the emotional subconscious sphere. I haven't related that so directly for this reading. I might try that a little bit more specifically in the future, but we're going to read these 5 cards a little bit differently. Now, I laid them out as the elements, but I'm going to read the central card as the center, the main idea. And then top is what is in the conscious, bottom is what's below us, what's in the unconscious. I'm reading it something like the left-hand section of a Celtic cross. The left card will be what we're coming from, and the right card is where we're going. So let's read it that way. That's the way it looks like it makes the most sense from this week's spread. So the central card is what? Beryllium. Do you know beryllium? Do you have beryllium laying around your house? Well, beryllium, in this card we see a figure balancing upside down on a sphere. Now, all these cards are so beautiful. She's balancing upside down on a sphere. Her legs are up in the air, but not exactly straight up. Yeah, it's not a rigid pose. It's a very fluid pose. Now you see a lot of curve. Her garments are flowing as well. Her legs are looking very balanced in one sense, and yet not rigid. There's a fluid balance to her pose. So, beryllium is the card of strength and flexibility. And at our core, each one of us is that, I believe. We are strong. We are flexible beings from the moment that we arrive in this beautiful universe as these beautiful human bodies, in these human bodies, I should say, not as, in these human bodies. We are non-physical beings having a human experience in a human body. So as we arrive in these human bodies, we arrive strong and flexible. Have you ever seen a baby lift its leg up and above its shoulders and suck on its toes? Babies' bodies are flexible, but it's not just the bodies that are flexible. Babies' bodies and intellects and spirits are very flexible. They're very accommodating. And they're strong. They're very strong. They can't lift a 100 kilogram weight. No, not that kind of strength. They're internally strong and they're growing at incredible rates. Now, babies are strong, flexible, and resilient. And that's who we are when we are born and until the day we die. We have that in us. Now, we add a lot of stuff which makes us less flexible. But that flexibility is still in there. We don't lose it. That is who we are innately. And beryllium is here to remind us of that. It's the card of the ability to endure extremes. Some environmental extremes, certainly, but also emotional extremes. We can endure much greater emotional extremes than we have to, frankly. No? We can be very, very happy and we can be in the pits of misery. We don't have to do that, but we do it and we endure it. Most of the time we endure it. A few of us, unfortunately, push ourselves beyond the point of endurance or decide that we don't want to do it anymore and we give up, and that is true. However, we can endure immense extremes. And we don't have to, but we can, because we are that strong. It's the card of the protector as well. Now, we have the ability to defend others if we choose. We don't only have to worry about it. We actually only do have to worry about ourselves, but we don't. We choose to defend those we love, those that we think need or want defending. We can and do that. Probably more than we realize. And if you're here watching this, I'm sure that you have spent a lot of your time defending others, and that is commendable. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it or you don't have to do it. That's wonderful. And we have that in us because that's part of the co-creative experience. We aren't here in order to defend others. That's not our responsibility. It's our choice. The moment we think that it's our responsibility that, I got to go out and defend people, we're closing ourselves off from the powerful force of intention when we choose to defend from love, not from anger, not from fear, but from love, from the love of each other. I see someone having a negative experience, not able completely to deal with what they have placed themselves into, and in love, I defend them. I don't do it for them. I don't fix it for them. I defend them so that they can do for themselves, that they can open themselves up. I give them the space to be able to open up again to their powerful flow of intention. And if I do that with love and joy and appreciation for my opportunity to help someone, I am completely flowing with my intention, and I have all of that power with me and behind me. So we are those beings, the strong, flexible, defenders, supporters, able to influence others. Because we're also ones who are able to amplify the virtues, the good points of others. I'm not only talking about virtues in the classical sense of faith, hope, purity, etc., chastity. I'm not talking about those virtues, although those virtues are included. But not only those virtues of inspired creativity, the virtue of brilliant thought, the virtue of open exchange of emotion, the virtue of nurturing. All of those virtues, all of those wonderful things that we came with the strong intent to do in this physical universe, all of those great points that we have, yeah, we are the ones who are able to amplify those of others as well. We have them ourselves, but when we give our attention and love and understanding of abundance to those around us, when we co-create, we amplify their good points, their virtues as well. And that's another quality of beryllium. We amplify that of others. And when we are able to do that, we are in our shining glory. We're not only working for ourselves, but we're co-creating and helping others to work for themselves. And their creations and our creations interact and become something beautiful and new. And there are times when we lose that sense of that connection to the fullness of ourselves. We experience a block. And that's what that silicon above us is. Now, above the beryllium, we have a silicon. And silicon, we probably all know Silicon Valley, right? It's an element that's being well harnessed for the computer age. However, silicon is originally, and in this deck, a card of the frustrated element. It's the element that wants to be carbon, because they're very similar. Carbon and silicon are very similar elements in the chart. They're very close neighbors. They're kissing kind of cousins. And carbon is the base element of all life. And silicon looks at carbon, and carbon gets jealous and frustrated, according to this oracle deck. So, silicon is the frustrated one. Why? Why would silicon be frustrated? Why does silicon look at another element and say, I wish I could do that? Well, carbon is doing an excellent thing. I mean, carbon is the basis of life, and life is an amazing, wonderful miracle here in this universe. And silicon looks at all of that glory surrounding carbon, and because all of the focus is on something else that is doing something that is recognized as wonderful, instead of looking at their own beauty and abilities and their own particular talents in this universe, silicon's looking at another and trying to match the other, trying to become the other, which is always impossible. If we look at somebody, a mentor or a star or some person that we think is great, and we say, I want to be that, we can never be that. We can never be that. We might end up doing something similar, but we can never be that. Because that is that person's thing. And the moment we try to become that person or do that person's thing the way that person did their thing, we're doomed to failure and frustration. And that's what this card is reminding us of. That when we have come up to a block, it's because we have put our focus perhaps in the wrong area. We want to become what we are not. That doesn't mean that we're not going to evolve. Certainly, we all evolve. Part of this life experience is evolution and expansion, and we evolve. We're not the same person we were when we were born, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. We've evolved, we've changed. Our interests are different. Our talents have improved, or we've gained new talents. However, trying to become someone that we are not is where we find our frustration. I am not going to be Rachel Pollack. I am not going to be Barbara Moore for so many different reasons. Yeah? No matter how much I admire them, I'm not going to be that. I can't be that. And as soon as I try to put that as my goal or my desire, I will immediately become frustrated because it's an impossibility. It's a misplaced focus. And what's below that? What's below that is plutonium. Not plutonium. Plutonium. I'm sorry. These cards are a little hard to see sometimes. Yes, plutonium, which is a card of darkness, of not understanding. And the reason why we perhaps choose or place our focus on something that we cannot be because somebody is already being that, it comes from our misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding plunges us into a darkness. Now, not all darkness is bad. I love the dark. I love the night. In fact, there are times when I prefer the night to the day because the light is softer, the mood is softer, we can see the stars. I love the nighttime, but that's not the darkness I'm talking about. There's a darkness of misunderstanding that could go to the extent of becoming the darkness of ignorance. And we were born in full knowledge. We were not born ignorant. We were born full of wisdom of the ages and spirit and God. Whatever you want to name you want to call that spirit, God, Brahman, Divine Mother, Mother Earth, Gaia, Allah, whatever we want to call that universal mind. We have that in us the moment before we were born, and as we are born, and as we continue living, we have access to all of that. However, we can cut ourselves off from that or limit our access to that knowledge. And that's the darkness that I'm speaking of here. The darkness of both misunderstanding and sometimes ignorance. That's what plutonium is reminding us of. That feeling comes from that. It's the card of frustration, of futility. But it's temporary. Yeah? Plutonium is a temporary element. It degrades very quickly. So even if we are in the darkness of misunderstanding, even though we are feeling frustration and the futility of what we are doing, remember those creative blocks, it's going to be temporary. We might not realize it because we're there and it feels like it's eternal, while because we want so desperately to get out, the time expands and 1 second or 1 minute feels like an hour. 1 hour feels like a day. 1 day feels like a week. But it is a limited time. We'll get out of it one way or the other. So those are the two cards above and below, which are addressing that idea of that creative block, the block to our creation, whether it's a creative activity like an art or our job or a relationship or anything in our lives that we are creating. Now, what's behind us? Behind us, we have sodium. Sodium, it's a wonderful thing. Our oceans are full of sodium. Our bodies are full of sodium. If we lose sodium, we die. Sodium is important for us as living beings and for this entire planetary system. The ecosystem is carbon, water, sodium, nitrogen. Carbon, water? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sodium. So, sodium is one of those key elements. Potassium. There are many of them, but sodium is key. And it's everywhere. And it's the spirit of enterprise. It's the spirit of productivity. And we have that. Part of our beryllium states of strength, flexibility, ability to endure extremes. Part of that is also our spirit of enterprise, which comes from sodium. and our productivity, we are able to keep working. Even though right now we're experiencing some blockage, we arrived at that blockage by our productivity. Now, we were not unproductive until we reached a block. We were productive until that point. Otherwise, we wouldn't notice any difference. If we were doing nothing, we would never notice a block. But we are innately productive. We love doing. That's why we came into these bodies. We came into these bodies to do, to experience. And that's why those who poo-poo the law of attraction, saying, oh, you're trying to get stuff without doing anything, are completely misunderstanding the entire concept of the law of attraction. Law of attraction has nothing to do with inactivity. It has everything to do with the quality of the activity that we are doing. So, because we are productive beings. And it's the card of opening doors to others' potential, which reminds us again of the beryllium, right? We open the doors with sodium to other people's potential as we protect them, as we amplify their good points. We also open doors for them, for their ability to express and create. And that's part of that co-creative experience. Have you ever noticed there are times when you've been in a block and somebody has said something or has done something and you get an insight and suddenly that blockage crumbles or dissolves? That's because somebody has opened a door to our potential. And that's the sodium element. We all have that in us. And we do it, oftentimes without even noticing it. It's the card of the teacher. So we can protect and we can teach. So we've got those two cards, really strong bases. And still, there are times when we go into that silicon or plutonium mode of wanting to be something else, keep creating blockages for ourselves, plunging ourselves into the darkness of ignorance, because we have closed ourselves off from the wisdom that is available to us. Perhaps out of jealousy, of envy, of misplaced desire, the desire to do somebody else's current of intention rather than our own. And so the last card is Mercury on the side. Mercury. Mercury is very useful, very helpful. It's a card of the con artist in this oracle deck. It's a card of the manipulative creator, the manipulative seducer. Now, it looks shiny like silver, but it's poison. It's very, very toxic. We use, I don't know, well, maybe you're not old enough to remember this or to know this, but we used to use Mercury on things like mirrors to give it the shine in the back. We used to use Mercury in thermometers, so to check our temperatures. But Mercury is very, very toxic. And it's the card of the con artist. Why is that here? Because when we experience that block, we are sometimes tempted to move into or to move around it by becoming a con artist. We're not going to solve our problem. We're going to pretend like we are better than we are. We're going to try to convince other people that we are something else. Because we haven't been able to achieve what we want, we're going to convince other people that we have achieved it. We're going to manipulate them by seducing them into believing that we are greater than we think we are. Into thinking that we are Rachel Pollack, that we are Barbara Moore, for example. Or perhaps as great as them. And if you don't know who Rachel Pollack or Barbara Moore are, I might put a link below, but you can also research them on your own. They're wonderful authors, wonderful creators of tarot decks and books and reading and ways of reading and understanding and researching tarot and oracle. They're just magnificent human beings on this planet, and everyone should know who they are. I'm just saying. So Mercury is the card of the con artist, where we circumvent our blockage. Instead of waiting and dissolving the block and then naturally flowing into our creativity again, we sidestep the block and put on a show. A false show. Not a real show of our art, but a false show to dazzle and delight those, to get attention that we feel like we're missing. A very resistant way of living. Cut off from the powerful flow of intention. And that's something that we want to avoid. We want to avoid becoming that con artist. We want to sit with the block instead and wait until we rediscover our inner beryllium, rediscover our inner sodium, so that we can dissolve that block with both of those, reconnect with other people. And so one solution, perhaps, instead of going into Mercury, would be to connect with other people, to do sodium. If we feel like we're not moving with the powerful flow of our intention, maybe the best thing would be to divert our attention from ourselves to others and help others with their streams. Co-create with them, show them, help them discover what their potential is. And if we can do that, naturally, our emotional level, our emotional set point, as they say, will rise. Because those plutonium and silicon feelings are low set points. And it's because of that low set point that we have started blocking our own creative progress. So sometimes going out and doing the sodium, doing the beryllium, protecting other people, offering protection to others, offering what we do know to others will help us dissolve those blockages. And I think that's what this spread is trying to remind us of. From all of that there will be times when we have cut ourselves off from the powerful flow of intention. And it will feel like a block. And we will feel like we've plunged into darkness. And it will feel like we're frustrated and not know why. And rather than moving into the deceptive con artist, rather we can move into the teacher, move into helping others first. And as we help others, as we co-create with others, as we lift up others, as we allow them to shine, help them to shine, our blocks will naturally dissolve and we'll be free to move forward again. So friends, we've got 4 questions to ask before the light disappears on me. Let's get to that first question. So the first question is, where can I be more open? And frankly, if we're having an issue with blockages of any kind, we can be more open in all aspects of our life. Yeah? Even if we're not experiencing blockages, we can be more open in every aspect of our lives. Because when we are open, we are experiencing all of those wonderful things like joy, love, hope, creativity, desire, all those wonderful things. And we are moving forward powerfully with the current of our intentions. So, where can I be more open? Really, the answer is everywhere. But we have 2 cards answering this question. One is the Moon card, and one is, surprisingly, the Ten of Wands. But let's start with the Moon. If you've been here before, if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I have a different way of looking at the Moon from some other readers. The Moon to me is not a negative card unless it is in reverse, and I don't I'm not reading reversals, I should say. I am not reading reversals for these spreads. So for me, the moon is a positive card because I love the moon. I love the night. I love the night sky with the moon and the stars, and I love the quality of light of the moon. I love the way that it changes every day. I love the way it cycles. I love the way it affects the waters and moves the tides in and out and in and out, never-ending cycles. It never stops. And I love all of that. So in this spread, especially answering this question, where can I be more open? It's not saying I can be more open to fear, anxiety, and fantasy or illusion. No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying I could be more open to my subconscious. Because a lot of my answers come from there. My intuition comes from there. And that's another area I could be more open to. I could be more open to intuition. All of us could be more open to our intuitions. Even the ones who sell themselves as intuitives could be more open to intuition. It's a card of reflection. The moon is reflected on the water, and we can see that reflection. We can observe the soft reflection of the moon in the ocean or on a lake. A beautiful, beautiful reflection, which reminds us to reflect. Because everything that we perceive in the external, what we consider the external world, is a projection of the internal. There is no separation, really, between internal and external worlds. It's all one. However, we create this dichotomy of me and that, which is fine. It's useful. It helps us to manipulate, to work with things in this physical universe. However, when we notice things are going a little off kilter, when we notice that things are not happening for us, that we're noticing that we're not as open as we would like to be, perhaps, or we find ourselves wanting to close off, we might want to look inside and reflect on what is happening within us and how that is being mirrored back to us in the external world. It's a card of imagination, and our imaginations are such fertile ground for creativity. And yes, the moon card is imagination. And imagination is one of the great blessings of human beings. Perhaps other physical entities imagine as well, don't know their experience. I know we human beings can imagine, and that's another thing we can be more open to. I think a lot of us cut ourselves off from our imaginations. We're taught to ignore our imaginations or to belittle our imaginations or to think our imaginations are just imagination. It's just imagination. It's nothing. But imagination is so powerful. And we want to be open to those things, to those powers, our imagination, ability to reflect, our intuition, our subconscious. We want to be open to them. To be able to perceive and receive. And then we get the Ten of Wands, which is a negative card in the Rider-Waite-Smith system, and we're reading a Rider-Waite-Smith decks. The Ten of Wands is the card of the burdened one. Yeah, in the traditional RWS, yeah, Pamela Colman Smith's art, we see a person with 10 wands on their backs, and they're really borne down. In this deck, the wands are not as perceptibly heavy, but this person looks burdened. Definitely still looks burdened. It's the card of hard work. Now, we don't want to be open to hard work, really, because the moment we put hard in front of work, we are starting to resist what we are doing. Rather, when we feel the idea of hard work, we want to open ourselves to the work and let that hardness drop. Yeah? That hard wall that we place between ourselves and experiencing the work that we are doing is what makes it feel burdensome. And we want to be open to that experience. We want to not ignore when we are feeling burdened, because a lot of us also do that. We work and we work and we work and we ignore that we are feeling this burden because we got to get this work done. But even though we try to ignore the burden that we are feeling, that burden is draining us of energy. It's draining us of power. So we want to be open to our experience of that burden, experience of that hardness of work, so that we can do something about it. There are always other ways of doing the work we are doing. Think of cleaning the house. You could clean the house as a burden, as a chore, as hard work. Or you could turn on some music, get your funk on, and clean the house in joy and fun, and do it with your family or with your friends and turn it into a cleaning party. I've done that before. And it makes light work. And the same group of people could get together and do the same work in burden and hardness and, oh God, well, once we get this done, maybe I can order a pizza kind of atmosphere. Same tasks approached very different ways. And if we're open to the way we are experiencing the things that we're doing, then we can do something about the experience. If we're not, if we shut ourselves off to, well, I have to do it. I just have to do it. I don't care whether it's a burden, whether it's a hard work, whether I'm suffering. I've just got to do it. I'm not going to pay attention to the way I'm feeling, and I'm going to let all of that feeling drain me of my power. It's the card of exhaustion. And we also want to be open to feeling when we are exhausted and allow ourselves to take breaks when we need to, so that we don't get there. We don't have to be exhausted. There's always another way around it. And that's what this card is reminding us. We want to be reminding us of. We want to be open to the brilliance that we have within in the moon card, and we want to be open to how we are experiencing what we are doing. We want to be open to the block that we are feeling. Whether that block is a wall, so a creative wall that is preventing us from moving ahead, or that block is the feeling of burden and exhaustion and hardness of what we are doing. Have you ever tried to study something and studied something because you were interested in it, you found it fascinating, and then something else that you studied and you had to study hard because you wanted to pass a test and you needed to pass the test, but it was really, really hard, and God, it just took so long and it was a burden. Which study was more effective for you? We can turn anything we are studying into one of either of these experiences. We really, really, really can. So that's what we want to be open to. What is our experience? And what do we know? And what can we imagine? Let's look at the second question. This spread moves from what can I be open to what delights me. What a wonderful question for this. Because if we can find what delights us, again, those barriers will crumble. Those blocks will dissolve. And what are the two answers for this wonderful question? On one side, we have the Three of Swords. And on the other side, we have Temperance. Can you imagine delight from either of these cards? Let's try and find it together. So let's start with the hard one this time. Let's start with the Three of Swords. Now, in this card, it doesn't seem quite as bad as in Pamela Coleman Smith's art. In the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, there's a heart, and three swords stuck into it. Very, very painful looking card. Now this card looks painful too, but not nearly as bad as having 3 swords stuck into your actual heart. The Three of Swords is a card of strife, of loss, of heartbreak is the usual keyword that people remember for this card, heartbreak, which is an emotional experience, which is odd because this is a suit of thought and mind and communication. So this Three of Swords is reminding us that there is an emotional level to our strife and our loss, but it's also a mental thing. Especially when we think of a mental block or creative blocks. Yeah, that sense of strife is a mental construct. That feeling of having lost our ability to continue, to create, is a mental construct. The grief we feel, if you've ever experienced writer's block or some other creative block, there's an element of grief that is part of that. But that is also a mental construct as well. It's an attachment. It's a mental attachment to something that we are not able to fulfill. Because we have built a wall up in front of us, or we have allowed one to arise. So how can that be delighting? How can that be delightful? How can that delight us? The answer is really in that temperance card. Now, usually we think of temperance as balance, although for me, balance is more justice. Many people think of it as moderation. Yeah? Like mixing water and wine so you get a less potent drink. Moderation. It can be a card of patience as well. And that's a good thing. If we can delight in patience, that would be wonderful. But I don't think that's the answer to this question. I think the answer to this question comes from the Three of Swords into the Temperance card. Because for me, the Temperance card is a card of alchemy, where we take two things and we make a third. We make something new. So we take that mental anguish of the Three of Swords and we make something new of it. Have you ever heard of that, where somebody has transformed their pain into a work of art? And how delightful that is. How cathartic that is. And cathartic can also be a delight. Catharsis can be a delightful experience, as long as it's not a catharsis of going out and taking our revenge on something else. That can be cathartic as well. But that's not the kind of thing we want to follow with our stream of intention. It's not on our stream of intention. However, temperance, that kind of mixing and joining and alchemizing, if we could alchemize our grief and our sorrow and our strife into something new, into gold, how delightful that would be. If we could use that, the darkness that we have created for ourselves in our minds with our thoughts, if we could we could change that into something else, how delightful that would be. We could discover purpose again. We could discover forbearance. And that's another meaning of the Temperance card, forbearance. It's a card of being attuned and harmonized. Rather than balanced, to me, harmonized. And I see a difference between those. Balanced is two things or more, not tipping over. Harmonized is more than that. Harmonized is when things are in union and it's a dance, it's a fluid thing, it's in motion, and it's sonic. And it's more artistic to me. And a lot of grief can be transmuted into art. And how delightful that is. And I think that's what these cards are trying to say as a response to that question. We take that darkness that we felt, the plutonium and the silicon feelings, and we alchemize them into a new precious gold, delightfully. Does that make sense? Let's take a look at the third question. This is, what is the right timing? What is the right timing? Is there a right timing? The two cards that come up in answer to these, both of them are from what many call the major arcana, which are supposed to be the more important cards. And I would hesitate to call one set more important than the other. But yeah, the major arcana, let's call it that. One is the Chariot and one is the Wheel of Fortune. So what is this answer telling us? We have the Chariot, the person in the chariot moving forward. We have two animals, one dark, one light. And traditionally, many of us, myself included, see that these animals are trying to go or have the urge to go in different directions, which would stop the movement of the chariot. It's the card, so this is the card of willpower and action, focused action. Because we want to keep both of these horses going in the same direction so that we will move forward and not split the chariot apart. And so that might be part of the answer to this, that our blockage is because we're not keeping our horses going in the same direction. So we want to keep ourselves going in the same direction. And that would be the right time. When we get our horses in line, when we get our thoughts in line, when we get our hearts and our minds in line, that's the right time. It's also the card of determination and control. Not control like preventing something from happening. Yeah? Don't you go outside. Yeah? Don't you do that. Not that kind of control, but hey guys, let's work together. Let's keep ourselves moderate. Yeah? The control of the temperance card, where we keep things harmonized. So when we've got that in line, that would be the right time. Certainly. And then we got the Wheel of Fortune off to the side. The Wheel of Fortune is the card of good luck. So is it trying to tell us that we need to wait for our good luck to appear for us? No. It's a card of life cycles. So do we have to wait for the right time of the month? It's the card of turning points. So is this card telling us that we have to wait for something to happen? I don't think so. I don't think so, really. I think this card is trying to tell us that we need to be sensitive to where we are. And we can create all of that on our own. We can create our own good luck. We can create serendipity. We can create the right timing. But we can't create the right timing unless we're sensitive. So we got the Chariot. We want to keep ourselves in line. And we also want to be sensitive to where we are in the world and how open we are in the world and what we are creating in the world and how aligned we are in the world. So in this card, we're reminded that we want to give attention to how we are feeling and how our feeling is in alignment or in misalignment with the rest of our experience. And the rest of our experience will line up if we are in alignment. And what do I mean by alignment? I mean our conscious minds, our eternal minds, yeah, the non-physical us that has been before these bodies and will continue to be after these bodies, when all of us is in alignment and we are open to the powerful force, the powerful flow of intention, then that's the right time. And we can do that by making sure that we are also internally in line. We've got both forces pointed in the same direction. And then we can start our action. We can start our chariot moving forward again. And it will be natural, but we need to be sensitive. Let's look at the fourth question. You've noticed the flow, have you not? We've moved from the general idea of how powerful we are and how many abilities we have for ourselves and in relationship to other people. But there are times when we put our attention in the wrong place and we drop into a darkness. And we want to avoid becoming the deceiver, the manipulator, the con artist. So we come knowing that we have power, but are always going to be times when there's going to be a block. And so we want to be more open. And we want to discover our delights and transmute those times when we experience a block into something else. And we want to feel for the right timing. And now, what can I experience more fully? We can truly experience everything more fully. But we've got two answers to this question this time. We've got the Queen of Cups, which, by the way, is my MBTI card in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Yeah, I am the Queen of Cups. And we have the Two of Swords. So, what do we have? The Queen of Cups. Yeah, this is an interesting card in this deck because you notice that we've got a queen holding a cup, and behind her there is a globe or a world. Now we see a map kind of thing in blue, all in blue, a water color, the color of water. And we also perhaps notice that the map is somehow also reflected in her cup. Did you notice that? There are ripples in her cup that look like it could be a reflection of that map behind her. So, she is the card of compassion. She's the compassionate one. We want to experience our compassion fully because our compassion, when we are experiencing it, we are fully open. She's the caring one. We want to be caring of others as we teach and as we amplify their virtues. She's the nurturing one, which again is also that aspect of the beryllium and sodium from the oracle cards. She's warm. And she's empathetic and intuitive. So we want to experience our empathy. We want to experience our intuition, certainly. And we want to be compassionate and nurturing of those around us. And if we experience the power of our nurturing, we will naturally open up even more fully. And as we open up more fully, again, those barriers, those blockages will dissolve, will crumble, will disappear. Will become as ephemeral. We will see that they are as ephemeral as they truly are. And then the second answer is the Two of Swords, which is often a card that is seen fairly negatively in the Rider-Waite-Smith system. It's the card of indecision for many people, not being able to make choices. Catch-22 is what some people call it. But to me, even in the Rider-Waite-Smith system, it's an idea of balanced thought. Choices, certainly. And we want to experience our choices more fully. Why do we want to do that? Can you imagine? Why do we want to experience our choices more fully? And do we not experience our choices fully? I don't think so. I think a lot of us are making a lot of choices without complete or full conscious awareness. Some of us make many of our choices unconsciously, automatically. Are you aware of that? Are you aware of when and how often you choose almost as a knee-jerk reaction, like a reflex? I go to this store, I get vanilla, or I go to this store, I get chocolate. And we want to experience our choices more fully. Because as we experience the act of choosing, we will become much more creative. We will start living much more consciously. We will become more mindful, if you will. We will become more mindful, if you will. We'll be able to weigh our options, and that's another meaning of this card to me, weighing options, which is part of being aware, being conscious of the choosing process. More often, not in anxiety. I'm not saying that we need to be very careful and anxious about, oh, I'm going to choose now. What am I going to do? What am I going to choose? Oh no, I'm not really sure. That's not what I'm saying. And we wouldn't feel anxiety if we were truly open to the process of choosing and trusting our power, trusting our beryllium states of strength, flexibility, ability to endure extremes, that we can get through whatever choice we make. Our powerful flow of intention is going to move us in that direction, and we can also always choose again. Our choices are immeasurable, innumerable. We're never completely locked into any choice that we make, unless we choose to be locked in. So we want to experience the choosing of things more fully. We want to experience our balance of thought. And a lot of us tend to move and get a little bit manic depressive, not clinically, but still manic depressive. We move from high thought to low thought, to high thought to low thought in an unbalanced way. And if we experience our thinking process in a mindful way, our thoughts will naturally become more balanced. And then as they're more balanced, as the extremes start to lessen, we can start moving up the emotional scale and experience more often the joy, the love, the appreciation, the gratitude, the anticipation of what lies ahead. And even when the blocks suddenly might arise because we have inadvertently created it, we can appreciate the experience and experience that experience of experiencing the experience. Can you wrap your head around that one? We can experience it all more fully. So we want to experience our emotional connection and how we support each other as the Queen of Cups. And we want to experience our mental state, mind and heart connected, and balanced thought, and mindful choosing. And if we can do that, then we'll move past any blocks that we create for ourselves inadvertently. We'll just move past them naturally. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't this reading flow, interestingly, from one point to the end and then wrap right back around upon itself to merge in one kind of Ouroboros of experience? Because we experience more fully and we move back to that central state of beryllium. Strong, flexible, able to endure extremes and able to protect and amplify the virtues of others. It's a wonderful thing. This life is a wonderful experience. So friends, we will end this here. Remember, there will be information about the decks in just a moment and below. Hit the like button if you found some value in this. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell so that you get notifications of when I upload videos. And share this with anyone you think might be interested in this. And also, comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced any creative blocks, and how did you get yourself past or through them? Or have you gotten yourself past or through them? Are you in the middle of one now? Let's chat about that. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.